Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to some. It's still morning here where I am. Today we've got the DFS NASCAR live show, Folds of Honor QuikTrip 500. This time we go to Atlanta Motor Speedway. Joining me, as always, is Dane. How's it going this Sunday?
It's going great. Ready to get going. Ready. It's a big week coming up with golf coming back. Millionaire maker out there. So it's going to be an awesome week all around.
Yeah, it's a big week, that's for sure. Because I think we've got, on top of NASCAR, or sorry, PGAs that are starting on Thursday, the Charles Schwab Challenge. We've also got NASCAR race on Wednesday night, and then we've got four
Mm-hmm.
NASCAR races Saturday and Sunday on the weekend. So it's gonna be absolutely
Uh,
crazy moving forward. And if more sports start coming back, like it sounds like in the next month or two here, it's gonna be absolutely ridiculous. So super excited,
it
super
is.
excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, for today, like I said, we've got the Quick Trip 500 from Atlanta Motor Speedway. A little bit different of a track. It's an older style track. It can be compared to just an old surface. The way it wears out tires a lot like Darlington. It's an intermediate track, 1.5, just under 1.5 miles, I believe, on the track type. So going to be looking at a lot of that in my model this week. I'm kind of looking at a little bit of track history, and then I've got some current form. Just looking at the races, there's been 5 races since racing returned. Kind of concentrating a little bit more on the 4 races on those 4 intermediate tracks, the 2 at Darlington, 2 at Charlotte, and then looking at some track type history going back to the start of 2019. The one thing to keep in mind when looking at that on the cheat sheet today, or this week in general, is that Atlanta last year race was the only intermediate race where they didn't use the full 2019 rules package. The air ducts were actually used as brake ducts to cool the brakes there. Fairly similar, but don't just go off of last year's track history. That's kind of why I look at a bunch of different metrics when I'm breaking it down. What kind are you looking at today?
Yeah. It's like you mentioned, and I said in the article, it's almost reminds me of Charlotte with the Darlington tire wear. So it's like a mix of the two almost. But as far as, well, I'll just go right into strategy. I think you covered as far as what we're looking for in drivers. With strategy, I'm looking at 2 to 3, maybe 3 dominators in this race. It's long enough race, and you can see some shakeups up top with whether it be if we get a competition caution or any
Yeah,
caution early in this race. You can anybody that gets out front on pit road could hold it. It's important if you watch yesterday's races. Having that bottom row on restarts was very important, and I think that'll continue today.
yeah, I agree there. I'm just kind of going to jump into a little bit of track history here. Just going to go off the sheet a little bit. And looking at the last, this has been a Harvick dominated track, during any Atlanta race. They talk about the Harvick line that he likes to run on the bottom. He can just really hook that bottom line, and he does it better than anyone else. Last year was a little bit different in terms of him dominating. There was 4 drivers that led 40 plus laps, and then there was 5 drivers that led 20 plus. But digging back even deeper, looking at Harvick specifically, laps led going from 2018 and back 181, 292, 131, 116, 195. He led 0 and then 101 before that. So he's led 100 plus laps in 5 straight, 6 of the last 7. He's got top 10s in, what do we got here? 5 straight races. He's won, or yeah, 5 straight races. He's won 2018 and top fives in 3 of those as well. So he's been pretty dominant. The other dominant driver that really stands out to me is Brad Keselowski, especially in terms, we're talking about pricing. Brad's down at 8,900, which just seems like a steal this week. Super chalk. He's won 2 of the last 3 races here, second in the other one. In terms of laps led, he hasn't exactly been a dominator. A lot of that has to do with Brad. And then last year, like I said, it was very spread out. This year, I have a feeling that it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I don't think we see Harvick go out and lead 150 plus laps, or anyone for that matter. But I do see 2 drivers kind of leading, let's say 70 plus, 80 plus, kind of in that range, and then maybe a few other drivers in that 20 range. So I'm kind of looking at 2 dominators today, and Brad and Harvick would be my 2 right off the bat.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really like both of those guys as well. I mentioned in my article I like Harvick the most, especially of that top range 10K and above. Brad is too cheap, like some of the other guys we'll get into that are in the lower ranges are way too cheap this week. And that's probably the two chalkiest, I would say, with maybe Chase Elliott in there as well. Are maybe the three chalkiest dominators, would you say?
Yeah, and I'm actually, it feels weird, but I'm off of Elliott in terms of being a top dominator this week. I just, for his price, I think he needs to lead 50 plus to kind of pay off. Just, I love the price. It's sub 10K. He's been red hot. I agree with you. You talked about him in your article. It's just this track. He's only had one top five in four races. The last two were 10th and 19th last year. In terms of the, looking at the track history in terms of the high tire wear track. So looking at Darlington as well, he's only got one top five there as well. So I've just, he's been red hot, but myself, I find myself going either up to Harvick or down to a more balanced build with like a Truex and Kurt Busch or Keselowski. Two of those three kind of jam together, and I think there's instances where you can fit all three of those guys together. So just it's just personal. I guess we talked about this offline before we started that on DraftKings today. I'm only running the $20 three max. And then those three obviously in a lower three max as well. I believe it's the $3 three max. And then on FanDuel is where I'm concentrating a little bit more today in terms of multi-entry. I don't have time to do both, and I've kind of neglected FanDuel a little bit in terms of multi-entry. And so I'm just going to attack that site a little bit more. I think I'm going to do about 25 to 30 lineups over there. So I'm a little bit limited to Chase Elliott. I probably have none on DraftKings, but I will have some definitely over on FanDuel. Do you play any FanDuel at all? I know we've done all these shows. Just wondering if you play any FanDuel. By that smile, I'm going to go with no.
Definitely, I haven't played it, and I think I did play it in the Daytona 500. I threw one lineup in, but I have not played it in golf or any other sport for a long time. Just personal preference, really.
I play more for baseball and NASCAR are kind of what I concentrate most on when in terms of I just can't be chasing all the sports around, so I kind of dedicate certain sites to certain sports. Some sports I play both, obviously, but yeah, for FanDuel, it's not my favorite site of the two, so I kind of limit it to NASCAR and baseball. But yeah, back to the race. Just check for any questions here. So, thoughts on Jimmy Johnson? I know we have different from reading your article. I've seen he's a notable in your top tier. Me personally, I'm not. Where do we have here? He's 14th in my model. Just looking at starting position. 15th, I do like. He has been running since the return to racing. He's got two top fives, three top tens, 12.4 average finish, and a 15 running position, average running position, which is right where he's starting. But in terms of fantasy points, I'm probably going to have more at his 10K price tag on FanDuel. He's 10-2 on DraftKings. Yeah, 10-2 on DraftKings, 10 on FanDuel. So I'm going to have a little more on FanDuel, but in terms, I don't think he's much better than a top 10 car this week. I think he's probably right around where he is starting. So I'm definitely more interested on FanDuel myself. How about you?
I'm going to have some Jimmy. I think he's going to be fairly low on it. If you just look at the sticker shock, maybe of Chase is below him at 99. Starting on the pole, has a clear path kind of to lead early in this race, I guess. I think Jimmy's going to be low on it, and he's had a good car. Kind of like Chase, maybe not as good as Chase's, but he's been starting in the back of these fields recently, and I think there is an outside chance that Jimmy could get up there, have some fastest laps, have some laps led, and potentially be a low on way to get on a winning team. But I'm not going to be super overweight on it.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with you 100%, especially if people are even looking just at track history alone and form. Track history and form. I mean, Chase and Jimmy have been fairly close. The Chevys have been fast all season. They've been fast since the return, especially the Hendrick cars there. RCR, I guess, too. I mean, you talked about that in the article. But being that Chase has been even better, he's got the win there. He's got better track history recently versus Jimmy. I think you're 100% spot on. If you're going away from the Truex or Chase and you want a good GPP low-owned pivot with, I'm going to tell you, I don't think Jimmy today has top 10 upside, but for sure, I mean, he's a 7-time champion. He's got top 10 upside, especially with how fast the Chevys have been running. He's got wins in 2016 and 17 here back-to-back at this track. if he's going to be 5 to 10% owned, and Chase is going to be 20 to 30% owned in GPP, I think that's a terrific pivot. So that's kind of where we're at on Jimmy. The next question was kind of down into the punt range. We haven't talked about any of these guys yet, so we'll transition to this. The question is, do you go with, I know who your answer is going to be, Michael McDowell or Reed Sorensen down in this range? So for starting positions, we've got McDowell. He's sitting at 36th, and then Reed's right at the back. Personally, just in terms of driver talent, Michael McDowell, in my opinion, should not be cheaper than Reed Sorensen. That is before we even knew where starting positions were. Being that McDowell's starting that far back, I really like it. He's got, in the 5 races since they returned, a 19.6 average running position, or 19.6 average finish, and 21.6 average running position. 3 top 20s in 5 races. I think he's kind of going to be around 25th place car. I think he's probably got upside of 20th to 25th place car. And at that price, I think he is definitely the guy I'm going to be shooting for.
I completely agree.
I mean, seeing Reed Sorensen with that 14th place finish, I mean, that's 10 years ago, though. That's the thing with Atlanta when you're looking at track history at some of these tracks, is they only race here once a year versus your Charlottes, Texas, Las Vegas. They're racing twice in a year. So when you're looking at 10 races ago, that's only 5 years ago, versus Atlanta, we're talking 2010. That's pretty irrelevant for me. So when I'm breaking down track history on the show, I'm definitely looking at the last 2 average finish, and the last 5 is as far as I really stretch it out. So McDowell's got top 30s in 3 of his last 5. Sorry, and yeah, I think at least his floor is 25th to 28th. So looking at the fantasy matrix, which we haven't talked about yet today, just kind of scrolling down, 25th place finish to 28th for him. You're kind of looking at anywhere between 30 and, if he gets a 20th, that's 40. So you're looking between 30 and 40 points for 5,200. I think that is excellent. And last show we talked about how much are you looking for from your punt drivers on DraftKings if you're going down into that 5-6K range. Well, down in that 5K range, I think 25 to 30 points is suitable if it allows you to get your dominator and a big not a big place differential, because there isn't a lot of those this week because of the way they're doing qualifying. But if you can go and get 3 guys that finish top 5 up in that upper tier, 1 or 2 of them get 50 plus laps, McDowell at 25 to 30 points is more than enough in my opinion.
Yep, I agree. He's definitely my favorite below 6K. As we move into that 6K range, and we can, if there's any more questions, you can.
Nope, I'll just fire away. I'll raise my hand.
But okay, in that 6K range, I'm wanting you to sell me on some of these plays, because as I've started to buy or to build, not buy, I've kind of got locked in on some of these guys, and I'm having trouble spreading my exposure out. So maybe the guys I'm getting locked in on are Jones, Custer, and then in that 7K range is the Benedetto and Bell. So sell me on some of these other guys.
Let's talk about the rookies. Let's jump in and talk about the rookies. I know some of them aren't quite in that range. I know, I'm just going to go to my other sheet here. So we got Cole Custer. You mentioned him. He's starting 31st. This will be his first race here in the Cup Series. He does have Xfinity experience, so that's something I brought up this week and looked at their last Xfinity races at this track, the tire wear kind of track. I know it's different cars, but I wanted to get a little bit of a view. So he got 10th and 27th, started 8th, started 4th in 2018. He got in a crash, finished 39th. Bounced back. He got the pole at Atlanta in Xfinity last year and finished 2nd. He only led 2 laps. I mean, he didn't get that dominator, which I would have liked to see. So he does have that experience. I love the price on Custer down there. And looking at the matrix, I mean, he's starting 31st. Even if he finishes 25th, we're looking at 25 points. I will definitely take that at 6,100. I think he's got upside of the right around 20th again. Maybe not 25th. You're looking at 35 to 25 points somewhere, and I think that's fine. Ryan Preece, looking at a little bit as well. He's got experience at this track in a Cup car, only 1 year, obviously, so it's not like he's got a huge amount of experience over everyone else. He finished 35th. I mean, that's not great. I think he can improve on that. But Custer definitely over Preece. And then you got Ty Dillon. He's not finished worse than 26th here in That is 5 career races at the track, which is very positive to see. He started in 28th, and flipping that over to if he finishes where he starts, you are looking at only 16 points, which isn't great, but I think he's got 25th upside. Even 25th is only 22. So I rank those three in that 61, 63. Custer, Ty Dillon, and then Priest. Absolutely love Jones. You talked about him. Just 6,600 is just way too cheap for Eric Jones the way he's been running. The Toyotas have really started to come on, and I mean, when you're looking, he's 7th in my model. He's finished 7th, 11th, and 14th here at this track. He's got 2 top 5s and 3 top 10s, and 11.2 average finish since the return of racing. Everything, he just checks all the boxes for me. He's 9K on FanDuel, but only 6,600 on DraftKings. He's definitely a core play. I want to know your thoughts in this range on Suarez. Suarez has been one of those guys because he's in that new equipment this year. He's always given us that place differential with this new qualifying, the way they do the draw. He always seems to be in the back 3 or 4, and that price is still sub 7K. And he does have track history. I mean, it's in better cars, obviously, but he hasn't finished worse than 21st. Even if he finishes 25th, I think he's good enough to hit value still for you this week. A 25th is 31 points. Even a 30th is 21 points at 6,900. Are you on board with Suarez?
Yeah, I'll have him in probably 10-15% of a 20 max type build, so 2 or 3 lineups. I just probably like the guys below him more. And that's kind of where your matrix comes in with maybe comparing like a Eric Jones and a Suarez, which I haven't done yet. So let's do that.
Okay. So we got a question here. Thoughts on getting different with Logano and Hamlin and Blaney on DraftKings versus those are 3 drivers that we haven't even discussed yet. So in a GPP, I don't know personally if I would just go with all 3 of them in a core. I would, if you're looking at maybe as, say, the high-owned guys being Kurt Busch, Truex, Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick kind of, and Brad Keselowski in, say, that mid 8K and up range, if you were to pivot, even go with one of those guys and pivot 2 of the other ones to 2 of the guys that I had mentioned there that, let me jump back to the question here real quick, that Andy had asked, out of the Logano, Hamlin, and Blaney, which would be your favorite of those 3?
Blaney.
Price?
Like him still coming. Price, yeah, for sure. And I think how unlucky was that last week?
Yeah, I agree.
He's had a really good, I liked him coming into last week. He's had a really good car. He had another good car last week. I know it's a completely different track, but I think he does have a chance to get up there and compete again. And 8,500 is a decent price for him. The other guys were Logano and Hamlin, right?
Yes, and they're priced almost the same, 10.5 and 10.8.
Right now, I'm leaning a fade of them in a 20 max build because I'm trying to just tighten up my core. And I like Harvick more than them, and I like Jimmy and Chase more. So I'm not gonna just spread myself too thin. I'm gonna go in on some of the guys. So right now, I'm leaning a fade, but yeah, for a large field max, if you're maxing a bigger amount of, if you got more lineups than I do, then sure.
I would, out of those, I definitely like Blaney in the points per dollar at 8,500. He's more of GPP pivot, maybe off Brad Keselowski, just $400 cheaper. Blaney's going to be super low owned, I think. I think all 3 of these drivers are going to be low owned. Looking at track history between Hamlin and Logano, I'm very close here. Logano's been more consistent here at the track. No finish worse. He's 23rd last year, but before that he hadn't finished worse than 14th, and he had 4 in the last 7 races, 4 finishes of 6th or better. Hamlin has crashed 3 times in the last 7 races, but he's got 3 top 5s in the last 8 races. I'm more leaning on Hamlin. I think he's got a better chance to possibly dominate. I read somewhere someone actually dug into went back even further looking at tracks with tire wear and stuff like that, and the Toyotas it was Bob Pockers actually this morning. He is kind of picking Toyota. He's leaning on Toyotas. He had gone back I think 2 or 3 years and looked at these high tire wear tracks, and Toyotas seem to be right there kind of in their long runs, and we've kind of seen it over the last few weeks. I know not a lot of tire wear and stuff in terms of like Charlotte and Bristol, but the Toyotas seem to come out and have, not be there at the start of these runs and restarts, and then as this, if we get a long green flag run, it seems the Toyotas really been moving their way forward, and getting some good long run speed. So I would say Hamlin over Logano myself, but again, I'm going to have zero exposure on DraftKings. I'll have more on FanDuel just because that's where I'm multi-entering today. But on DraftKings, my 3 max, $20 3 max, and $3, I'm just using the same 3 lineups in all my 3 maxes. I'm probably going to have Harvick in 2 of them, kind of with a Harvick and, say, Keselowski build in 2 of them. And then the other build is going to be probably just a full balance fading Harvick. Maybe not fade Keselowski. I might be 100% on Keselowski on DraftKings in my 3 max. I'm not 100% yet, but that's the way I'm leaning. Multi-entry, I would definitely have Hamlin, then Logano in that area.
Yeah, so here's the where I'm at with that. I agree, Hamlin over Logano. But if you just compare Truex to Hamlin, same team, Truex has been better here, and he's $1,200 cheaper. That's where I'm at. I'm going Truex over Hamlin all day for $1,200.
Just had some news come in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Kurt Busch failed 3 times.
Oh my god.
He goes to the rear and has to do a pass-through penalty. So he's going to be a lap or 2 behind at the start of the race, like once he gets going. So to me,
okay.
I'm going to go and update the sheet. I have a copy of the sheet open, but once we're done here, anyone that's watching, he's definitely gone off my core and more into my GPP. That's going to probably move Martin Truex Jr. Up in terms of ownership. Same with Brad Keselowski. They're kind of wrapped around him in pricing. Where is Kurt starting? That was
12.
Yeah, 12th, just outside that top 10. So I'm not going to fade him 100%. I still think, there's time for him with the stages and the competition caution and then the 2 stage breaks, possibly a caution or 2 in there. I think he can get that back, get on the lead lap, and still get a top 10 finish. But on DraftKings, it's going to be a fade for me. For FanDuel, I'm still interested just because finishing position is worth a little bit more and place differential is worth half as much. So I'm definitely going to have more on FanDuel and less on DraftKings now.
Wow,
but yeah, that's huge. I haven't heard the pass-through penalty.
We call in NBA, we call it the Woj bomb. What do we call from Bob Pockris?
We're gonna have to come up with that one. The Bob bomb? I don't know. That seems cheesy. We got to come up with something better. That's a shout out to one guy in my Patreon just shared that I missed the Bob Pockris thing come across, and it was HDE is his name, and he posted it from Bob on Twitter. So I don't know if we've heard of that pass-through penalty at the start of the race. That must be for failing 3 times, not just 2.
Yeah, I think somebody had to do that earlier this year, but I can't remember who it was.
Oh, and then not that it matters, but LaJoy and Smithley are to the rear for 2-time failure, and Timmy Hill to the rear for unapproved adjustments. Not that I'm worried about any of those 3 anyways, but just so you're aware of what's going on there. So a few more questions here. Are you on Ricky Stenhouse today?
I was just thinking about that actually. 7,600 as a pivot off Bell and De Benedetto even. I think that's perfectly fine. He's starting back far enough, and we've seen his upside is a top 10 finish.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know when that's going to come, but I like that for GPP.
And that's a definition of GPP right there. Like a guy that can either get you like 35th and kill your lineup, or it gets you like an 8th to 10th place finish at 5% ownership and's in the winning lineup. That's a perfect pivot because Christopher Bell, I think that's one guy that you brought up earlier that I didn't touch into yet. But looking at his Xfinity, he's gone the last 2 years. He started on the pole, finished 3rd, and then he started 3rd and won the race his last 2 years. So his experience, I think, at Atlanta in Xfinity and how much success he's had, he led 142 laps. He dominated that race in Xfinity last year. He's in good equipment this year. I think he's going to be super high owned in that range at 7,400, especially starting where is he 27th. I think he's easily got top 15 upside at his price. So I think pivoting to Ricky is a great GPP play today. I think he's going to be half the ownership of Bell. You even mentioned Benedetto there as well, and even Suarez to some point will take away some of that ownership as well with his track history, low price, and starting position. So definitely like that as well. I'm going to run through a few more of these questions. Thoughts on Almirola?
Completely off.
Yeah, same here. He didn't make my list. If I was doing maybe 50 or more, he'd probably be in there. Someone just asked, yeah, thoughts on Kurt Busch? We just talked about Kurt Busch. I'm going to have none on DraftKings now. I will still have some in GPP over on FanDuel just because I still think he's a top 10, top 5 car. Lots of time to get up front. We've got.
Yeah, so for him, I'm going. I was probably going to be 25-30%. And now I think I'm still going to keep some on DraftKings, and maybe like he's probably a 10, maybe 15% play for me.
Yeah.
And that's in a 20 max. So that's 2 to 3 lineups.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. When you want to break it down to 20 lineups, that's exactly what it is for sure. So Troy says, I think it's a chalk week 100%. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of chalk out there. This Kurt Busch thing only fuels that. So, I mean, that sometimes that sucks, and it's all chalk isn't bad. You don't have to fade every driver that's going to be 25% owned, like Harvick. Exactly. If he still wins, that's fine. You can make your pivots somewhere else, like we just said. Go off of Christopher Bell is going to be high on. Go to Ricky Stenhouse. Just making that one pivot and keeping Harvick and Keselowski as your core, and just changing that one maybe more high variance driver in terms of Bell and Stenhouse. They're both fairly high variance. I mean, Bell's a rookie. Stenhouse's finishes are very rocky up and down. But both, I think Stenhouse gives you more upside of, an 8th to 10th place finish and half the ownership. So I think there is some definite spots that we can go ahead and pivot to in GPP to get away from some of that chalk. I kind of look at the ownership as I don't want all 6 drivers super chalky. I'll take 3 chalky drivers, and then I'll make pivots on the other 3. And then I'll kind of make 5 lineups around that 3 driver core with different, maybe possible lower owned guys in those lineups to get different levels of total overall projected ownership, depending on how everyone goes. Because, I mean, we're not going to be perfect on our projected ownerships. We could be way off on a guy, and I don't want to fade a guy thinking he's going to be 30%. He turns out to be 15. That's happened a lot, and I kind of feel dumb after, especially when that guy does really good. Why did I fade him again?
Yeah, so that's as far as pivot in GPP. We were talking about Suarez earlier, and I went on the Matrix and kind of compared them. So Suarez, 28th place finish, he gets 25 fantasy points. For Bell to beat that, for Jones to beat that, I mean, you're looking at 26th. So, yeah. I mean, 16th, sorry, for 26 points. It's possible. I mean, I'm not going to put it out of the question that I'll have a little bit of Suarez, but that's kind of when you compare the two. You got Jones starting 14th and Suarez in the very back, and right away you kind of think, well, Suarez has got way more upside. But if you look at it, and he's probably got 25th place upside. I mean, with what he's done this year, that's 31, and then Jones needs a 13th place finish, which is very
to beat that by 1 point. Yeah, exactly.
But that's why he's going to be way more on. So take a couple pivots off there. That's one for you to keep your core and pivot off Jones in the lineup.
And that's raw points as well. Like when you're talking Suarez to 31st and Jones to 13th, that's raw points.
Yeah, Suarez is not getting any fastest laps.
He's not. Whereas I think Eric Jones has upside of 10 to 20 fast laps in there as well. So I'm definitely more Jones than Suarez, but I think that pivot is definitely there as well. Okay, we'll grab a couple more questions here and we'll get to some lineup building. What do we got? David asks, is it worth looking at the top 10 to 20 guys to possibly gamble with the competition guys to try and lock down track position? Making a few lines that are heavy on mid-pack guys and kind of avoiding. So he's just pretty much asking, looking at guys from starting 10th to 20th with that competition caution. We've kind of seen where if Chase gets out and leads, there's a chance that he may lose that lead at the first competition caution, but I honestly don't think it's going to be someone from the 10th to 20th that jumps up there. I don't think those guys are going to get up there and lead laps till stage 2 is kind of the way I'm looking at it.
I think what he's asking is somebody going to take a strategy and stay out or take 2 tires, and that's not happening here at Atlanta. So, or at least I don't think so. And if they do, they're going to get passed by the first person with 4 tires. So, like you said, I think Chase can lose. That if we has a competition caution been announced?
Yeah, I just don't remember what lap. I want to say 30.
I don't think I've seen it.
Bob posted it. I seen it, but he's got so many posts coming through. I went and set him up instead of just stuff that he tweets. I've got anytime he replies to anyone, it comes through. But yeah, I can't find
I think
it just on a quick
pretty.
scroll.
There's been
25, lap 25.
Back, so. Okay, so I mean, I think Chase can if he's leading at that point, whoever is leading could definitely lose that. But I don't think it's going to be because somebody takes 2 tires and stays out, gets out front, like we saw Alex Bowman do at Charlotte. I don't think that's happening. I think you could see somebody within that, whoever is in the top 5 or something could pass him, which some of those guys in the 10 to 20 range could get up there in 25 laps. So, I mean, I just don't think I would target 10 to 20 thinking maybe one of them's going to go strategy.
I think a lot's got to go right in your favor for that strategy to work. Like Chase losing the lead on, say, lap 1 or 2, maybe falling back to like 5th, someone else leading for a few laps. A lot of lead changes in that first up until the competition caution. You would need that to happen, and then someone, in that 10th to 20th to kind of file up there if there is, say, maybe a caution, an actual caution going on before the competition caution to help them move up quicker. I think there's a lot that needs to go on for that strategy to work. Not that it can't work, but there just seems to be a lot that has to go on for it to work. So I'm kind of against it. I'm looking for that early dominator from the top 5, probably even the front 2 rows for sure. Excuse me, something in my throat there. Okay, so any other questions here, and then we'll get going. What time's lineup block? I think we got 3 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah,
1 o'clock. So we got about an hour and a half. So
yeah, 3.
Every week I've been down to like the last, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 17 seconds for Xfinity the other day I had left, and I was finishing my lineup. So we got lots of time today. Okay.
At least it's not iRacing.
There was another driver I wanted. Yeah, no doubt that was. It seems like forever ago. So someone asking, with Kurt Busch on DK, if you had him in a lot of lines, would you go to Elliott or Logano? And I know personally, I talked about fading Elliott, but I do like Elliott more than Logano. I would pivot my shares to Elliott over Logano.
I agree. What's the difference in price though? I mean, isn't it like $1,000?
Yeah, there's a bit. Elliott is $99 and Logano's $10,500.
No,
so
I mean
$600.
From Kurt.
From Kurt. Kurt's $94. So Elliott's
personally,
right there.
If I have some and I don't have Truex, I'm going to be more on Truex. I think this does, like you said earlier, put his ownership up a little more. But as a direct pivot with the same price, it's Truex for me.
Yeah. And then, it would be Elliott would be my next choice. I think you're leaving too much on the table. Just a direct pivot going all the way up to Logano. That's $1,100 you're leaving on the table. You could probably, if you're double punting in that situation, you could probably upgrade one of your punt plays to, like a mid-tier value with that $1,100 if you wanted to go up to Logano. I'm just not on Logano very much at all this week. So I'm with you on moving to Truex, or if you've already got Truex, then Elliott, just with a direct swap there. Any other drivers? Oh, William Byron's one I have labeled as a GPP. I'm going to have more exposure on FanDuel. He's going to be higher owned over there, obviously, but he's starting 20th. He has an average finish position of 17.6 in the 5 races since the return, but he has got a nice gap, 15.0 average run, so over 2.5 spots better in terms of average run. He feels like he's kind of in that bad luck category, kind of like Ryan Blaney has been. I think they're kind of due for another big finish. He seems like he's got 2 top 20s here in his career. I think he's got top 15 upside. I think he's going to be super low owned in that kind of 8K range. Tyler Reddick, I think, is going to take over some of the ownership, as well as going below down to Christopher Bell. He's kind of sandwiched in between there. So we talked about Stanos being a pivot. Byron is another pivot for me. Do you have any exposure to him today?
I don't yet, but I definitely am gonna. My plan is to get him in probably 3 or 4 lineups. I think he's a good pivot. Like, he's in the same equipment as we've talked about already with Chase and Jimmy, and we've seen recently with Bowman. So they just got to figure things out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. Okay.
What about Kenseth? I mean, he's not looked great recently. 8,100 is a little up there, starting 19th.
Yeah,
I think I'm off, but you have any?
he's 30th in my model, and I mean, that's looking at track history, which is pretty darn good. 3 of his last 4 starts here have been top 5 finishes. I mean, that's going back to 2017 and back, unfortunately. Since the return, he came out hot in that first race back, but he's kind of fallen back since in an average running position of 19.4 overall in these last 5 races, and that average DK scoring is the lowest of any driver over 6,300. So that really scares me. So it feels like his price has gone up, but the quality, his points per dollar obviously have gone down because of that. The results have really gone down while the price has gone up. He's a full fade for me this week on both sites. I'm not, if I maybe was doing 50 to 100, I'd probably squeeze him in because he's going to be super low owned because of these recent performances and that little bit higher price. And like I said, Byron, Reddick, Keselowski's only a little bit more, and then Stenhouse, Bell are only a little bit cheaper. So I think he's going to be super low owned. He's a fade for me. But I mean, if you're doing that many lineups, I think it's a good GPP pivot because he's probably got, his high end, I think, is probably 8th to 12th, somewhere in there. I just don't see it happening. Today, I see him as like 15th to 22nd, somewhere in there. That's just not enough for me. The other question, sitting here wearing a Kyle Busch hat, haven't mentioned Kyle Busch whatsoever. I don't have any just simply because he's $500 cheaper than Harvick. I'll take that $500 and take the guy that's been absolutely dominant at this track on the low line. Harvick's been better in terms of performance on the track type history, like the intermediate tracks, 17 races going back to the start of 2019. He's got an average finish of 7.2. Kyle's 10.9. DK averages 15 points higher. FanDuel averages 7 points per race higher. 500 more laps led almost. And then since the return of racing, he's got an average finish position of 6.2 versus Kyle's 13.2. I'll take that $500 and pay up all day long for Harvick in this situation. He's got the track history, the form. He seems to have the dominator potential today. I think right now I don't have any Kyle Busch. I might pivot some just for GPP purposes if I get too much Harvick going. But right now I've got no Kyle Busch.
Yeah, I don't have enough lineups to get there for me personally.
Yeah, same. I'm kind of getting hell for it because I'm a super fan. But I mean, you got to take away in any fantasy sport. You got to take your fandom out of it. If you start putting your fandom and your heart into your decisions in DFS, you're going to start losing bad. Just kind of like blackjack or poker, I guess would be a good comp. 10 Jack's my favorite hand. I play it every time. Well, you know what? That's you're really reducing your odds by just saying that that's your favorite hand or whatever. So I don't take any of my favorite drivers and play them just because they're my favorite drivers. I know Kyle Busch can win anywhere. He's probably going to be a little bit lower owned because Harvick is obviously the favorite here, and then you've got Truex and Keselowski that are cheaper, but none for me today. Okay, what else do we got here? A couple more questions, and then we'll take off. Is Kurt complete fade now? No, talked about that. He's a fade for me on DK just because I'm not running a lot of lineups. If I was doing the 20 max, I would probably, like you, take my exposure down from 30 to 40% to say 10 to 15 myself. That's what I would do. But on FanDuel, I'm not worried about Kurt at all. He's really good here, and there's a competition caution plus 2 stage breaks plus whatever cautions come along. I think he can definitely get up there and finish top 10 It'll be, it's tough to get through the field here at Atlanta. Passing can be a little bit tough, but there's lots of time. You don't need the laps led from him on FanDuel. You just need him to finish top 10.
Competition caution should help him.
Yeah. If he falls a lap down because of that pass through penalty off the start, I think he can get that competition. I think he can get to the last spot in the lead lap and get that lucky dog free pass, on the competition caution. If he gets back to that lead lap on the competition caution, I think he can get probably top 15 by the end of stage one, somewhere in there. The fuel run, I believe, is around 68 laps as well today. So, I mean, we've got that green flag pit stop in there, some strategy. So, I think by stage two, he could be up there running almost top 10 again. So, FanDuel, I'm going to have lots and hope people fade him.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we got no other questions that I see coming through. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in today. Went pretty flawlessly. We didn't kick out. The internet came through. We agreed on some. We disagreed on others. So if you have any questions after the show, make sure to hit me and Dane up in the RotoPros Slack chat. If you're not a RotoPros member, head over to rotopros.com. Click that sign up button. You'll get a free trial to come in and check out what we're all about. Use promo code Chris and you'll get 50% off your first payment after trial. DFSR, you can head over, check out my content over there as well. You can ask questions. I have also got my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/Jagerbombs. You can get my Patreon. You can get all my sheets. We've got the we've now got sheets for all three NASCAR series, including the Fantasy Point Matrix as well. So come in, check out what we're all about. Or Twitter. On Twitter, you can reach out to me at Jaeger_bombs9, and we can catch Dane at
Red Stag 007.
Boom. That's it, guys. Thanks for joining us. Let's go make some lineups, get some green screens, and we'll see you next week. Good luck.
Good luck.